Hello my friends and welcome to part 3 of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel Loner Deck Battles Limit 1 Festival Edition. This is Season 3 of Loner Deck Battles. I'll begin by going over the first look of the final Loner Deck. The All-Seeing Eye, or the All-Seeing Reptilian Eye. This one seems interesting. So the deck description reads, take advantage of reptile-type monsters, such as reptilian monsters, to counter your opponent's monsters. Reptilian monsters have a wealth of effects that reduce the attack of monsters on the opponent's field to 0, and that take advantage of monsters with 0 attack. Wield the effects of monsters in the X deck, such as Reptilian Melusine, to seize an opportunity to win. Okay. So here's Sinister Serpent. So this is pretty much the errata effect. I don't think the errata effect really matters all that much, because if you don't have another Sinister Serpent in your graveyard, the whole banishing one during your opponent's next end phase doesn't also proc. So I believe you can just it's basically just a free add, which is pretty nice. And then, although you do have to wait until the standby phase, during your standby phase, in order to re-add it, so it doesn't just re-add itself right away. It still is pretty good for free discard fodder. And then Reptilian Servant. Wow, so it can destroy itself pretty easily, but its effect is pretty good. That neither player can normal summon a monster. But you're probably not going to be keeping it for very long because of all the ways it can be destroyed. And it can even be destroyed by battle too, so it doesn't have like a this card can be destroyed by battle effect. But still, when the opponent can't normal summon, that could actually be pretty good against some decks that like rely on a normal summon in order to get their plays going. But I feel like a lot of decks can find other ways around it. And then Reptilian Naga. But I guess they have to waste cards to get rid of like a level 1 guy, so that can still be pretty good. I mean, it's pretty good like to maybe like if you don't really have anything else, you can like normal summon this and then hope they don't really have any other plays besides normal summoning. And then Reptilian Naga. This one is one that can't be destroyed by battle. And also it can change monsters to 0, so that's pretty cool. But it does have the effect where you change it to face-up attack, so it can't really. So you can set it and then surprise the opponent, but then it can be pretty easily changed to attack position. But like that's okay, since you can like always just use as as like synchro material like after you surprise them with it. And then at least then one of their monsters will be at 0 attack. And then the Reptilian Viper can kind of take advantage of one of their monsters being at 0 attack. And also it can take control of, and sometimes the opponent will have a monster with 0 attack that you didn't even affect, and you can still take care of that one too. So it can be pretty good. It's like a more specific mind control effect. I mean, simply a mind control would probably be better than that, but hey, it is also a body, so, and a tuna. And I mean, if you take control of a monster, it can be a little bit easier to synchro summon too. So yeah, not too bad. And then Lamia. Oh yeah, this is another one that can change a monster's attack to 0. You do take a little bit of damage, but I mean that doesn't really matter because like it's worth taking damage in order to be able to special summon. And then this helps facilitate synchro plays, link plays, maybe even exceed plays. Yeah, there are a few level 2 exceeds, so. And then it's even more like modifying attack when it's sent as synchro material to the graveyard. So it's probably better to try to use her for synchro plays, but I mean if you want to use her for other plays, that's fine too, since she doesn't restrict herself. And then this one simply allows you to draw a card when summoned, which is which is pretty good. It is a hard once per turn, but at least you can keep using it every turn if you wanted to. And then Mori. This also this also allows you to manipulate opponent's monster's attacks as well by destroying a monster that you control. Also it can book a moon monsters if you really wanted to though, but it's probably better to like do the manipulate the attack, since you really want the monsters to go to 0 attack to facilitate other plays like taking them with the reptilian viper. And then Nyami is another one of, oh wait, this is another one that, so you have a lot of effects that can like bring attacks down to 0. So you have a lot of ways of being able to have a 0 attack in order to use for Viper. So you could pretty much just choose which one you want, and then you basically get to choose which one you want to seal with Viper. Although I do agree that like simply, I mean, this one has no strings attached when you take control of it though, so I guess it is a little bit better than mind control in that way, because since you can still use its effects. And I'm pretty sure a change of heart is still banned for the Mastodon format. And then also its first effect immediately helps out its second effect, because you can send her from the hand to the graveyard to change a monster's attack to 0 and then special summon herself right out, because now your opponent does control a monster with 0 attack. Oh, well that would have been good, but you can only use one Reptilian Naomi effect per turn. Well, I guess it doesn't work that way. That would have been really good. I don't think that would have been too overpowered if they would have let you activate both, but because they only let you activate one or the other, it can still be pretty good though. You can still like simply like maybe like normal summon her and then get her graveyard effect later on if you already have other ways of reducing opponent's attacks. And then Reptilian Gorgon probably isn't as good. You actually need to attack a monster in order to have it work. But it can't change its battle position also. but you might risk like destroying this in the process if it's attacking something with high attack. But if it's attacking something with lots of defense, at least it can't change its battle position, so now it can never go on the offensive. And then Ghost Ogre, just a generically good hand trap. Ash Blossom probably would have been better, but hey, Ghost Ogre isn't such a bad hand trap either. And then there are things that Ghost Ogre can stop that Ash Blossom can't necessarily stop. And then of course Eccentric, once again, it's versatile. It can destroy either a monster or a spell or trap. The monster unfortunately uses up your normal summon in order to do it though. Most of the time it probably will. So the destroying a monster effect isn't as good as the pendulum based effect to destroy the back row. I think they did it on purpose, since usually destroying a monster is worth higher. Worth more. I mean, that's kind of like with the same reason why Lightning Storm can only destroy attack position monsters and not just all monsters. I guess if they would have made Lightning Storm destroy all monsters, then it would have been way too powerful. I don't know about that, but it's what they decided. I guess they really do value destroying monsters much more than destroying back row, because its back row destruction is no strings attached. It can destroy both face up and face down, whereas with the monsters it can only attack face up attack position monsters. And then Dangerous Tsuchinoko, or sometimes people call it Dangerous Snake. I don't know why, but because it looks like a snake, but it's really Dangerous Tsuchinoko. But you might hear people saying the other thing. I prefer to call them by the actual names though. Anyway, so they only have one danger for this deck, but they wanted the reptile one to fit the reptile theme. So this one basically allows you to special summon itself no matter what with its effect. But if you do, if you are able to discard something that's not Danger Tsuchinoko, you do at least get to you do get to draw a card on top of that. So I would say like discarding something that's not the Danger Tsuchinoko is probably better anyway, especially if it's something like Danger the Reptilian Eye, since it has a graveyard effect. That would be pretty good, because you get to set up for a graveyard effect and get to draw a card. But the cool thing about Snake is that since it can special summon itself no matter what, you can have this be the only card in your hand. You won't be able to get the draw, but you'll still be able to special summon this even if it's the only card in your hand. So that's pretty good. And the cool thing about these dangers is since they can be revealed for their reveal effect as many times as you want, your opponent can't just negate it. Like if they do try negating it, then you can just reveal it again. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So they're kind of immune to like Ash Blossom, which is pretty cool for the dangers. And then Skylar, oh, this also takes advantage of zero attack monsters, so that can be pretty cool. It's another one of those you basically take control of them. And once again, these loner decks seem to love doing the Scapegoat Charade combo. I realize that that's the only reason why they really include the Charade. I mean, I guess you could take control of Beast Warriors or Winged Beast on your opponent's side, but it's really just because of the scapegoat. Yeah, because the fairy, even the fairy deck doesn't have the Herald doesn't actually send the Shrag to graveyard because it has to be a fairy extra deck monster or main deck, but most of the time it's just gonna be that in Tis. Anyway, the next card is Reptilian Gardener. I mean, you could destroy yourself to add a reptilian monster, but it kind of sucks that it doesn't just happen on a summon. You kind of have to put some setup in order to be able to add a reptilian monster. And then the next one is Kotal, which has a pretty easy way to special summon itself. And then you could actually end up special summoning a whole bunch of monsters with her effect. But you do need to have to be able to facilitate it by having a few other reptilian monsters in your hand. Which, I mean, isn't always going to come to be, but hopefully it does, since all of your... Since most of your monsters are going to be reptilian monsters. At least the nice thing about her special summon effect is she doesn't care how high their levels are. She can still special summon them, which is pretty cool for the high level monsters like this one, right? Like Reptilian Medusa, that can also be special summoned off of the Kotal effect, because then you don't have to attribute anything. Unfortunately, you can't actually special summon the Vasky off of her effect, because Vasky can only be special summoned by a specific way. But it's fairly easy special summon, since you do have a lot of ways of getting monsters with 0 attack. And it can be anywhere on the field, so even if your opponent only has one, as long as you have one with 0 attack, you can just also use that one. But it's definitely a lot more useful if your opponent just simply had 2. And that kind of makes her better than Kaiju, because she special summons on your side of the field, and she doesn't restricts you from summoning by other ways afterwards. And she has a pretty good on-field effect, allowing you to destroy even more monsters without the restriction of them having to be 0 attack. So yeah. Reptilian Medusa also has a pretty nice effect, but probably the only way you're going to be wanting to summon out is if you can get her out via the Kotal. And then Pankratops, again, Pankratops is also there for destroying even more stuff, since you can special summon, since it has that Cyber Drawing based special summon. And then also you can tribute itself to destroy a card your opponent controls, or you can even use it for link plays or single plays maybe. And then the Evil Dragon Ananta has a pretty easy special summoning. Yeah, this one has a pretty good card destruction effect too, since it can be any card on the field. But unfortunately, if Ananta is the only card on the field you have to destroy, it has to destroy itself basically. Or if you control, or if you're the only one that controls stuff, you have to destroy one of yours, since it's a mandatory destruction effect. So that's the downside of it. But it can have some pretty nice attack and defense numbers when it's brought out. But you probably want it out as a last resort, since you have to banish almost all of your monsters in order to bring her out. And then Earthbound Immortal Kakaria, or how you say it. The whole, like, only be able to have one Earthbound Immortal monster on the field isn't important because you only have this as your Earthbound Immortal. You're probably not gonna be able to bring it out super easily. The scapegoat can't be used as tributes for tribute summon. I guess you could always send to a graveyard. There are a few ways you can put this in the graveyard, and then you can later special summon it with Monster Reborn. But you do need to make sure you have that field spell, the Reptilian Recoil, in order to be able to keep him out. But he does have some pretty nice effects where he can attack your opponent directly and your opponent can't target him with attacks. And when he's destroyed, you destroy all cards on the field. Is there a way to destroy him without needing to put him on the field? I don't know. I don't think so. Okay, well. Yeah, I don't think there's a way to destroy him. So this is pretty much a field effect right here, since I don't think there's any other way for this deck to facilitate a destroy outside of the field. But yeah, that is kind of cool, since you can, since if you did have a way to destroy him while, not necessarily on the field, then you can still get its effect where, you destroy everything on the field, which is pretty nice. Anyway, the next card, Dark Hole, of course, just generic monster destruction, which can be nice, and then Raigeki, basically a better version of Dark Hole. And then Hoppy's Feather Duster, like a Dark Hole, Raigeki, but for back row. And then Monster Reborn, it can also help special summon out some of your high level monsters that can be special summoned via that way. So you won't be able to special summon Reptilian Vascular out of the graveyard, but you could do the Earthbound Immortal, so there's that. You could send him to the graveyard from your hand for Medusa's effect, and then later on special summon via Monster Reborn. So there's that. And then it can also take out some of your opponent's monsters as well. And then Recurring Nightmare can target 2 dark monsters with 0 defense, so can bring the Vasquille back to the hand, which is pretty good because she can only be special summoned out of your hand. And then it can't target the Pinkertops, it has to be dark. But there are a few of the other monsters, it can target your snake, can target some of your lower level reptilians. Yami Mori, Nyami. But it's probably better having in the graveyard anyway. Yeah, because this one, she doesn't get banished. She doesn't have that, usually when some monsters are able to special summon themselves in the graveyard, they also banish themselves when they leave the field, but she doesn't have it, so you can keep doing that special summon out from the graveyard every turn, as long as you meet the conditions. So you probably don't want to add her back to your hand from the graveyard, since I think she's been in the graveyard anyway. But there are some other options. And then This is another one that allows you to modify attack to 0. But it has to, but you can't actually target links because it has to specifically be a defense position monster. So either you're gonna have, so I mean you could use Yami Mori to bring into the defense position and then do the poison. It kind of sucks that it has to be specifically be a defense position monster, but that should come up often enough, I think. Anyway, Paw of Zaya is just a really good draw card. Lightning Storm. It basically has that Feather Duster and Lightning Vortex effect without the cost. In case you didn't know, Lightning Vortex is where you discard a card, destroy all attack position monsters your opponent controls. This one has that, but without the discard cost. Ogdoadic Water Lily is basically a mill. Do they have Snake Rain in here? They didn't even put Snake Rain. I'm pretty sure Snake Rain isn't banned. That feels weird that they didn't include Snake Rain in this deck, since Snake Rain has a pretty awesome mill effect where you can send 5, or no, I think it's 4 different, 4 reptile monsters from your deck to your graveyard. And that could like help make sure that Water Lily is able to get the extra effect. We get to special summon another reptile monster from your graveyard. Of course, you can't do Vasquille or Ananta since they can only be special summoned by specific ways. Okay. And then Reptilian Ramifications is another searcher. But at least it... So you can search for 2 cards, which is kind of nice. That helps facilitate for the send a card for your hand to the graveyard cost. But you could always just send Earthbound Immortal or Nyami or one of the other graveyard-based cards. The ones that want to be in the graveyard for one reason or another. To use its effect. It also has that attack modification effect as well. But like you pretty much only want to use that one. No, I think you just want to pretty much use the other ones first. Actually, I think you do have a few ones. So it can also search for the field spell. So that's pretty good if you're able to if you know you're going to be able to bring out the Earthbound Immortal. And then Molting Escape. So it's just pretty much a simple once per turn it can't be destroyed by battle effect. And the whole like gaining 300 attack. So basically if your opponent attacks into it once, they do have if it's in attack position, they do have to deal with the fact that it's a little bit higher attack before attacking to it again. They might still be able to destroy the battle the second time, but also I guess it could be kind of nice for Naga, but you're probably not going to have Naga that long. This is probably going to end up being placed on either one of your boss main deck monsters or maybe some of your SO deck monsters are reptiles. And then Reptilian Rage. And then it becomes reptile type. So that means this has a pretty nice pairing with Molting Escape. Since then, this basically becomes equip this card to any of your monsters. So that can be kind of cool. the whole synergy there. It gives you a little bit of a boost. Also has a pretty nice attack reduction destruction effect. And if your opponent has a monster with 800 less attack, it can basically be another card that lowers attack to 0 as well, but it's a little bit more conditional on that fact. Anyway, Reptilian Recoil. So this one can only target your monsters with 0 attack. If it could target any monster, that would be pretty cool, because then you could target a opponent's monster, but I mean that's okay too. You're basically replacing one of your monsters with 0 attack with a dark reptile monster. So that could also be another way to special summon the Earthbound Immortal from the graveyard as well. So yeah, not too bad. But even if you don't have the Earthbound Immortal, you still have a lot of targets that are dark reptile. Again, as long as they can be special summoned. And then this is another way of taking control of monsters your opponent controls with 0 attack as well. And it special summons a token at the same time to your opponent's side of the field. But that can actually be pretty good since after you steal it, you still have them have something with 0 attack on their field. So that can actually be, so even giving them a token with 0 attack can also be pretty useful. And if nothing else, you can always just special summon it in attack position, so they can still end up taking a lot of damage. And then Scapegoat, again, for the... It can be used for other link plays, but like it's obvious that they want you to use a few of the scapegoats for Tri-Brigade Shiraig, the Ominous Omen. But you can still use the other 2 scapegoats for some other link plays as well. Oh, they do have the Mirage in this deck, since you do have quite a few monsters that have 1,000 less attack. And then Call by the Grave. Once again, it's for helping to banish some of your opponent's threats, or getting rid of their hand traps and negating those effects. And then Offering to Snake Deity is you're basically going even, since you have to basically use up 2 cards, this one and whatever reptile monster you're destroying, to destroy 2 of your opponent's cards. But if like, I believe if you target Reptilian Servant with this effect, then the destruction of your 2 opponent's monsters won't go off, because it'll destroy itself before the trap card is able to. And since you no longer have the 3 targets, the effect fizzles out. So yeah, basically don't target Servant with this effect. But like, some of the other monsters can be fairly good targets, I suppose. Like Naomi, like if you want to target her, she can always be brought out of the graveyard later on anyway. And then Heavy Storm Duster. But the cool thing is, you do get to target any 2 cards your opponent controls, so that makes it a little bit better. And then Heavy Storm Duster is able to get rid of 2 back row cards, and as long as you activate during your opponent's turn, the whole downside of it doesn't even matter. And then Infinite Impermanence, a really good trap card that can be activated during the hand, or it gets a bonus once activated while on the field. So pretty good. It's an effect negator, and it can maybe even catch your opponent off guard sometimes if they forget about the whole, like, it negates cards in the same column, or it's spell and trap cards in the same column that this was played from, if it was on the field first. And then Ice Dragon's Prison. You can steal an opponent's monster. The cool thing about Ice Dragon's Prison is you don't need to have your opponent have a monster in order to use this effect. Your opponent's field can be empty, and as long as they have a monster in their graveyard, you can still use this to special summon that monster. But if your opponent does have a monster on the field, you can use it to banish both that monster in the graveyard and that monster on the field, as long as they have the same types. You can also use this for like claiming lethal, like if you're like just a little bit off of lethal and they have a monster with just enough attack to facilitate for getting game. And then Crackdown allows you to steal an opponent's monster, and then it can either be used for some kind of single play, maybe exceed play, or link play is probably the easiest way to use it. And then the X deck now. Old Entity Hastor. Allows you to, has a pretty good attack lockdown plus effect negation for a single monster, and if it leaves the field, including by your own effect, so if you're able to have it leave the field, and the monster's still there, you get to take control of it. Is there any other way of making it leave the field? Unfortunately, that has to be you can't just destroy it via this. But there are some other ways. I'm sure there's ways. I mean, you could Hoppy's. No, Hoppy's only works for your opponent's stuff. What's a way you can make it leave the field? I guess there's no easy way for you. I mean, you could use Eccentric's effect to destroy it while it's an equip card, and then you get to take control of it. So there's at least one way. But yeah, doesn't look like there's really any easy way of being able to do it. Still not such a bad effect though. It's going to be a little bit hard to bring out since it's a level 4. It might be a bit hard to bring out. And then this one has a pretty nice effect. If your opponent controls a lot of 0 attack monsters, you can just destroy them. So it's kind of a more conditional Raigeki basically. But you do get to draw a card for each monster destroyed, so that can be useful if. So depending on how easy it is to actually bring your opponent's monsters down to 0 attack, you do have a lot of ways though. And then Vulcan the Divine. Actually, that's a way you can facilitate the whole bring Hastor back to your hand, back to the X deck when it's treated as an equip card in order to take control of that other monster. This is one way you can do that. Wait, but since you're not able to activate cards or the effects of cards with the same name as those returned to the hand by this effect, I don't think it would actually allow you to take control of it. I'm not sure, but I don't think so because of that downside of Vulcan. But still, it can be useful for returning some of the other cards that you don't necessarily care about. And then Hyper Psychic Riser basically helps put a little bit of a lockdown on monsters attacking, for at least the lower attack monsters. And then also it can help put a stop to the effects of monsters with high attack. So it's a pretty useful lockdown. And then also, like, you can basically help get synchro materials back to your hand when it's destroyed. So that's pretty nice too. And then Reptilian Melocine. Basically you want to use only reptile monsters as material for this synchro summon, but that should be pretty easy to do. And if you're able to do that, it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, which isn't bad. And it has a pretty useful bringing attacks down to 0, so it's another one of those. But since it's an extra deck card, that's actually kind of useful since if you're able to bring this out, you're able to have a little bit of an easier time bringing attacks down to 0 since it's not one you have to draw into. And then also it has a search effect too when it's destroyed, so. But it has to be, just when it's sent, but it has to be sent by an opponent's card. That shouldn't be too hard though. And then Almond Kappa is one of your rank 2s for if you have 2 rank 2s on the field. It has a pretty simplistic effect. It can help protect itself from destruction by battle. Oh, it helps protect all of your monsters from battle destructions. And it helps facilitate pretty well with Naga if she's in attack position, since you also don't take battle damage from those battles. So that's pretty cool. And then also it has a little bit of an attack boosting effect as well. But fortunately, the whole like protecting a monsters thing only requires a discard, so it doesn't require it to have material. So that's pretty nice. And then King of the Fail Imps also has an effect that lets you search for any reptiles, so that's pretty nice. And then Outer Entity Nyala. So these are your rank 4 plays right here. Outer Entity Nyala has I guess the biggest draw of it is that it's basically a pretty easy way to be able to get a discard based effect. If there's any cards that you want in the graveyard, you can bring her out, and then like that's an easy way to get them into the graveyard from your hand. The whole like raising the rank thing, I don't think is gonna really make that much of a difference. But it's also pretty cool that and then some other effect seems kind of negligible as well. I don't think you're really gonna use it. I think the discard is like probably the biggest draw. Not discarding it to increase its rank, but simply being able to discard them so you can get them in the graveyard. And then Ragnar Zero. This is a little bit better in this deck than in the fairy deck, since you have lots of ways of being able to reduce attack in this deck. Yeah. So so yeah, you're probably gonna be able to get destruction off pretty well with her effect, and you get to draw a card. So pretty nice effect right there. And then Link Karibo, its effect becomes extra useful in a reptilian deck since you can actually use the 0 attack monster your opponent controls. You can actually do stuff with it. So this is pretty nice combination. Go into this and then have something that can actually use that 0 attack monster. It's pretty good. But it has to be when an opponent's monster declares an attack. So actually, unless you have like a quick effect way of being able to like do something with that 0 attack monster, you won't be able to keep it at 0 attack for very long. But also it's pretty nice because you get to special summon from the graveyard simply by triggering a level 1. And you do have a few level 1 monsters, I think. Yeah. Like 3. But I mean, maybe you'll be able to get out of the graveyard. But that also means you're not going to be able to bring it out very often since you only have 3 level 1s in your deck. And then Claire and Rushka simply calls for a normal summoner set monster. A little bit worse than Salamangreat, but it can it can be any normal summoned or set monster instead of just specifically one with 1000 or less attack. So there's where that comes into play. And then this one is a little bit better because this one is almost a 0 attack monster without really an effect. Simply just one to put a monster in your graveyard. And then Amirage is a little bit better because it actually has a little bit of a few sort of useful effects. It can help protect your cards from destruction by opponent's card effects, your monsters. And then also, you may be able to get it out of the graveyard too later on. And then Alien Shock Trooper is another reptile link. This one is about 8 counters. Well, at least it can like use those 8 counters itself, so you can special summon a few reptiles when it's destroyed, so that's actually not bad. But what's pretty cool is like the higher level of monsters, the high level monster that you put in the graveyard, like if you put the Earthbound Immortal in the graveyard, that's 10 counters. And so, if your opponent has like 4 or 5 monsters on their field, you can basically just special summon 5 monsters out of the field when it's destroyed by battle card effects. So like you could maybe even, if your opponent has a really high attack monster, you could even just destroy it yourself by battle and like get to pretty much special summon 5 monsters, and it's not too bad, and it's another way to get the Earthbound Immortal out of the graveyard since it doesn't care about levels, just as long as they can be special summoned. So yeah, you can send the Earthbound Immortal and get out of your graveyard along with 4 of the monsters later on. So that's actually a pretty powerful monster right there. That seems really cool. But I guess it kind of requires you have, like, you probably want to have a high attack monster in your hand, since it can just special summon that monster out later anyway. But it doesn't have to be a reptile that you discard, so you could just discard the Pankratops, but you just wouldn't be able to bring it out again with the Alien Shock Trooper's effect. But that seems like a really strong card. If you're able to discard something with high level, even if you're not, if you're able to discard like a level 3 or 4, you can still target 3 or 4 of your opponent's monsters, and then special summon basically 3 or 4 non-linked reptiles with different names from your graveyard. So yeah, that seems like a really powerful card. And then Reptilian Echidna is the next one. This is another way of being able to reduce an opponent's monster to 0 attack. You can only use each effective reptilian kingdom once per turn. Good. So its Link Summon helps facilitate its main phase effect right away. But of course, oh yeah, this is kind of where it was one of the cards I think I saw. So you preferably don't want that to be your only monster that your opponent controls with 0 attack. But it's still not too bad if it is, because like the more monsters your opponent controls that have 0 attack, the more reptiles you get to search for. So you can end up searching for quite a few reptiles, and you could even search for the Earthbound Immortal. Then if you can go into the Alien Shock Trooper in the same turn and your opponent has a fairly high attack monster, you can like pretty much set up that play where you send the Earthbound Immortal with the Alien Shock Trooper in order to be able to special summon it pretty easily later on. But you do want to make sure you have a field spell so it doesn't just get destroyed right away. And then the Tri-Brigade Sharag, it basically banishes a card when it's special summon. But since you're doing this, since you're probably gonna activate the Scapegoat, you're probably gonna only be able to get really one banish. But I guess it's pretty nice because, I mean, being able to banish any card on the field is still pretty good. Oh, since it's a Link 4, you'll probably have to use all the tokens, though. So that kind of sucks. Yeah, and then the center graveyard to search for a beast for a wing beast doesn't matter, since you don't actually have any. Yeah. So really, this is just there for a single banish, which is still kind of good, but it doesn't really help much with the strategy. But I mean, I guess if you really need to get rid of a card that can't be destroyed, is at least nice that it doesn't target and it doesn't actually destroy the card, simply just banishes it. So it can be pretty good for specific threats. Anyway, there's the final first look. So in the next part, I'll be doing some gameplay, and I'll be doing a little bit of a walkthrough before that, talking about the best plays you can make. I'll be doing that with the first loner deck that has the Rockets. So anyway, I'll hopefully see a lot of you in that next part. I hope a lot of you are excited for that. Please like, share, and subscribe, and consider ringing that notification bell for videos similar to this one, and videos in the Let's Play Solo Mode series for those of you who are interested in that series. And I'll be doing a pack opening now for those of you who want to save for that, since I have time for that. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go over the non-loner deck I'm using for this festival. I'll just go over that later, after I finish this series, probably, or maybe in part 7 when I'm going over the review, depending on how long that takes. Anyway, so here's where I go for the legacy packs. Okay, here we go. So I can open 10 more packs. Okay, I gotta try to hurry a little bit, so I'll just hover over the cards afterwards. Maybe talk about them a little bit if there's anything notable. Wetlands is pretty cool. I remember I used Wetlands in Duel Links. It basically helps raise the attack of Oh no, I think it's a different card that does that. I'll have to check. But there's a field spell that raises the yeah, no, I think it was a different card. Because I remember using that for the normal rare festival. And it ended up not working as well as I thought it would. And then Cock-a-doodle-doo is pretty nice since it can special summon itself and it can change its level depending on what you want it for. Sort of. And I believe it's also a tuner, so it also has that going for it. Gem Knight Topaz, look, I think that's one of the normal monster Gem Knights. So probably not a Gem Knight you'll be playing. Mother Spider. And then Skull Dice, a pretty iconic card in the anime. Yeah, so here's the cards that I got with the number owned for all of them. So you can take a look at the number I own of each. So here's the Topaz. It's not a normal monster, actually. I thought it was. It still doesn't have a great effect, I would say. There's probably better Gem Knights you'd want to be using. It's not too bad, so you might end up using it. It can attack twice during the battle phase, so that's pretty cool. And then Cock-a-doodle-doo again. Based on the monsters on the field, it can special summon itself at different levels, so that's pretty cool. And it's also a tuner. And then DD Proud Ogre simply gives attacks as DDs. Oh yeah, here this was what I was talking about. Wetlands, all aqua type water, level 2 or low monsters gain 1200 attacks. So that can actually raise your Paleozoics and frogs up to some pretty nice amounts. So I remember like using that in Duel Links in sort of a Paleozoic deck so they can become like 2400 attackers, which is pretty nice. So I'll just go through all of the rest of these just to make sure I'm able to get through them all. And you can always feel free to pause if you need to get a better look at the effects. Yeah, this one was a card that Joey played a lot. It had a really good effect in the anime, because instead of just being times 100, it basically multiplies, like, so like if you rolled a 6, it would be not, I forget how it was, but I think I remember the anime effect was pretty strong. So in case you want, so I kind of forget what the anime effect was exactly. So if you're interested, you can probably look that up. But yeah, I think that's gonna be my favorite card for this pack opening, simply because of the anime allure there. And then Wetlands too, because because I remember trying out that Paleozoic deck a few times in Duel Links. It wasn't that great, but it was kind of fun. I mean, if they don't give you the whole totally awesome package, like, might as well do whatever I can with Paleozoics. Yeah. So if you enjoyed this packet opening, please let me know, and also feel free to let me know which card out of here was your favorite. And I'll see the rest of you in the next video. Bye, everyone.